Thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar, Top 5 COVID Questions Asked by Small Businesses. My name is Allison Mitchell and I'm part of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce team. Before we start our webinar, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to share. Your microphones should be muted, but please ensure that they are to reduce background noise. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar, and you can do so by typing them into the question box on your control panel. All webinar registrants will receive a recording of the webinar in a follow-up email. Our speaker today is Tim Sothern, who is a partner with BDO Canada. Tim is responsible for providing a wide range of business advisory services. He specializes in accounting and assurance for larger owner-managed and not-profit clients and is an assurance specialist in BDO. Tim has over 25 years of public accounting experience in Waterloo Region and is the regional leader for BDO's not-for-profit industry team. On the webinar today, we are also joined by the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Ian McLean, who will be moderating the questions during Tim's presentation. I would now like to invite Tim to begin the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Allison, and good afternoon, everyone. As we've all witnessed over the last 3 weeks, there's been a massive amount of change in the business landscape, and especially with what the government's response has been to what I will say has been suffering among the small business community, suffering, and also certainly a tremendous amount of anxiety. As was mentioned in my intro, I've been doing this closer to 30 years now, and I have never seen my clients more scared than they are right now at this stage. So there is certainly a lot of trepidation out there, and a lot of curiosity with how the government programs are going to work. So how we thought we'd structure this program today was to talk about, all right, what are the questions that I'm most getting from our clients, my clients, through the last few days up to the last 10 minutes when I just got off the phone with a client, and I tried to organize them in order of importance and frequency. So I've got 5 of them to go through, and I'm sure each of you will have also some differing questions or different circumstances that hopefully we can answer the questions to. So the first question: should we as a business utilize the government wage incentive programs as they're laid out, or should I be laying off my workers and have them apply for the EI benefit programs? And often this is a difficult decision, and there's a lot of things at play for business. Before I get into actually defining what the programs out there are that the government has, a couple of criteria I talk to individuals, business owners about is, first, what is your cash flow position as a business, and can you actually operate and manage sales and still continue to generate positive cash flow? And if continuing operations are a focus of yours, then the government wage incentive programs are probably the programs for you. That's another client just calling on my cell phone, so apologies. So the other point is, what is the average pay of your workforce? If your workforce is at more the minimum wage standard, etc., then there may be more advantage for them to go to the government Canada Emergency Response Benefit. If your average pay of your workforce gets to that $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 range, and they're wanting to stay around, then it's probably to certainly your employees benefit, and then and depending on, again, the cash flow issue, it'll be probably to the business benefit to utilize the wage incentive programs. So I'll say there's probably 4 primary programs that are available to kind of help workers and contractors. From the business side, the big one that we're all looking at is the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. This is the one that essentially has the government funding 75% of wages up to a maximum of what they'll fund of $847 per week. Having them fund that 75%, the business then topping up the other 25% of that program. There is really one main criteria to that program, and that relates to your revenue position as a company. And how they're working it is basically they're going to have you compare your March revenues of 2020 to your March revenues of 2019. If those revenues are down 15% from last year, that is a change. That's late breaking from about noon today when the Prime Minister announced it. It was at 30%. Didn't make a lot of sense because businesses really started going over the cliff on the middle of March. So that actually makes a lot of sense from the government's point of view and from businesses' point of view. So if your revenue reduction is 15% and you're a private company operating in Canada and you've had payroll expenses in the month of March, then you're going to be eligible for this program no matter what your size is as an organization. The original 10%, which is now called the Temporary Wage Subsidy Program, was originally set up that you could save 10% of your payroll and reduce your source deductions, reduce your remittances to the government, but it was only available to small businesses, those with capital and loans called taxable capital less than $15 million. Didn't really help a lot of the bigger companies with the bigger payrolls. So that is why the government responded with the 75% program. So that is the big nut as far as the government is concerned in terms of overall spending. It could be into the neighborhood of $70 billion for the emergency wage subsidy program. The other items they have is what is now called the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. This is what the government has set up portals this week for applications to that program. Essentially now is the first stop. People do not apply for EI now. The first window you go to is this emergency response benefit of $500 per week per individual. And there needs to be an application put in an online system. I've talked to a few people that have applied. And it was relatively painless in terms of getting set up on a CRA account and getting that done. So I guess kudos to the government for getting that piece in. So now we'll just see when the payments come. So that emergency response benefit is $500 per week, set up over 4-week periods. And then the final system that they've tuned up is called the EI work sharing program. Essentially, this is a program where you can reduce your workforce, keep all of your workers, reduce them from anywhere from 10 to 60% in terms of their hours, and have the government pick up the piece in terms of EI benefits, whatever their regular EI benefits would be. The government will push in for that. That program's always been in place, and but they have basically taken out a lot of the red tape that would go with that in terms of business cases and understanding how far down your revenue has gone, those types of things. So they really open that up to make that a little more streamlined. Really, I think responses from my clients right now that I'm hearing is they're not as sure about doing the Workshare program. Sounds like a lot of work to them. They need something that's quicker, faster, so they're either picking the layoff procedure and have their employees go immediately to the response benefit because that's happening now, or they are going to wait it out and apply for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy program. The big question is from this is not necessarily how it's calculated and everything else. It's when. When will the portal open up, and when will it be ready to go? So I talked a lot about that one, but it's a big topic area. Second big question is, what about my lending options with regards to cash flow? What are my available options? First off, obviously, most of my clients have already done this, and they were on the phone with their banks almost, I would say, within days of, I'll call it St. Patrick's Day, when really everything kind of shut down. Talking to the banks about 6-month loan deferrals, principal and interest deferrals, that the banks have been actually remarkably quick at implementing and getting back to clients on that. So a lot of our clients have got that looked after. But right now, the one that is intriguing for most of my small, medium-sized businesses is the Canada Emergency Business Account, whereby if you have payroll as a company between $50,000 and $1 million last year, you can obtain a $40,000 guaranteed loan from a bank that is guaranteed by the federal government, interest-free. And the interesting piece about this that people say, well, this is a no-brainer, I should be applying for it, is if that loan is repaid by the end of 2022, the government will forgive 25% of that. So $10,000 stays in the business's pocket with really no strings attached. Our very smallest businesses say, well, why wouldn't I do that? Well, there's absolutely zero reason. Now, I just got an email from a client that I think he banks with TD, and just sent back and saying they're not quite ready to accept his application. So I think the banks are still working through this, but that is what is happening with that one. So again, big question is when. Not do you want to do it? It's when can you get it done, which is the burning question with a lot of clients. In addition, EDC, the Export Development Corporation, has set up various guarantees with businesses, especially that do any importing, exporting. And BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada, has also set up a program for additional cash flow loans and cash flow lending to businesses. So that's the other stop with regards to it. But the first two have been the most popular with the clients, with BDC coming in kind of third in terms of what the options are that they're taking. Third question is, what is the government saying about the HST and source deductions or payroll remittances? So basically, from that perspective, the government has originally did not want to touch HST. They did not want to touch source deduction. They considered them trust funds that should not be utilized by businesses for cash flow purposes. But when they saw the crisis expanding on a rapid basis. They had a change of heart as far as it comes with the HST. So HST and sales tax remitting to or pertaining to importers, payments that would originally be due now or in the next couple months have been deferred to June 30th. So you're still required to file your returns on time, but payments will not be due till the end of June. For some companies, this is a huge just a huge cash flow help at this point in time. The only question is, where are you going to be in June when that big bill comes through and a bunch of other HST payments come through? So we'll have to wait and see on that. Other thing to note is that while you need to file your returns on time, CRA has also come out with an administrative position that they would not, if you're late filing that return, penalties probably aren't going to apply. So they say they want them in on time, but they're not going to beat up a business for that. Source deductions, though, are still considered the sacred cow for the CRA. So there will be no deferral of source deductions. Save for the fact that if any company is taking the 10% wage subsidy program, which is still there, and reducing source deductions, that is still something that can be done. But other than that, payroll remittances need to go in on time as per usual. Fourth question. What are my deadlines to pay taxes? So essentially, for the magic date as far as paying taxes, both individually and corporately, is September 1st. So any personal taxes, in our normal system, personal taxes are due at the end of April to be submitted and to be paid. The payment deadline for now personal taxes, any personal tax installments, is September 1st. For any corporate taxes that would have been due on March 31 or after that date are also due on September 1st, as are corporate tax installments. Again, for some organizations, that's a big cash flow savings there as well. But again, somewhere along the line, you got to pay the piper, and if the world returns to normal back on September 1, there's going to be a bunch of cash owed back to the government. But again, things are changing by the minute, so we to even try to forecast out what will happen in September is going to be you're going to be a great gambler if you can say what the government will do by then. So those are the main payments. Then the next question, which is probably the least on the client's mind, is what are my filing deadlines? Personal returns are now, instead of April 30th, are due June 1st. If you're self-employed individual, you still have your normal filing deadline of June 15th. But for the rest of people that maybe don't have a sole proprietorship, June 1st is the filing deadline. For charities that have to file their charitable information returns, any ones that are due after March 18th are now just due on December 31st. So they have a full extra almost 9 months to get that filing in. For corporate taxes, this basically is again, any items that are kind of due in that are due in the normal course of operation now would be due in June. and trusts and partnership returns are due on May 1st. Trusts and partnership returns are normally due or were due last week at the end of March, and now they've been moved to May 1st. So lots of different extensions. People say, well, that must make the accountants happy. Not necessarily. I think we just prefer to get everything kind of done and set and push through. But it does take a lot of the pressure off the clients in this situation. So those are the top 5 questions I've been getting, and what I've been hearing, and just even as I've been doing this presentation, I've saw 4 or 5 preview emails all saying wage subsidy. So clients are continually asking about the wage subsidy program. So it's just a almost all consuming issue, along with just, again, the survival of the business itself. So anyways, lots of different programs out there, but that is a quick summary of what business has been asking me. So I'm going to just stop there, and I think we could take time for lots of time for various questions.
So thanks, Tim. Tim is a good friend of the chamber. Also, BDO is one of our sponsors for Business to Business on 570 News on a weekly basis, and is a regular on the show. And as he knows, our ratings always go down when he's doing the show. I'm just kidding. But we do appreciate his expertise. He's always more than willing to give us time when we need it. And we're always a little bit smarter once he's been with us. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and there's a series, so feel free to ask some more questions. We've got some time now. One of the questions that I hear, and we're getting a lot, of course, I'm not an accountant, nor do I play one on TV. So I'm going to ask you, since you are one, some of these programs, because they have evolved almost daily in terms of the parameters with them. Some people have started with the 10% program, because they didn't think they'd qualify, or they didn't know the rules around the 75%.
Right.
You can, my understanding is you can switch from one to the other. You can pick a lane. You're not stuck because you started with the 10% program. Maybe just explain. There are some rules around it, but explain that if you started in the 10%, you can move to the other one.
That is correct, Ian. And in the interest of time, I didn't go through that, but I will go through it now. The 10% program was kind of the initial response for the government, and I think I was on your radio program and kind of said that was going to be a drop in the bucket. They got to do more, because that's what we were hearing from most businesses, and that's when the Prime Minister came out with the 75% program. But the 10% program, what the good thing is about that one is that businesses can get immediate cash relief by reducing their remittances to the government, which for most, when all of this started, will be due on April 15th. So by basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is when they would, next week is when they'd be remitting. That 10% will allow them to, they can still take that reduction if they qualify as a small business and reduce their remittances. Now, in most cases, if you're that small business, as long as you meet the revenue drop criteria, you're also going to qualify for the 75% program.
So you can do both.
You can, yes, you can do both, but you're going to be able to double dip it. So then that business then turns around and applies to the 75% program. And let's say that gave them a benefit of $5,000. But originally they took the 10%, and they saved $1,000 on their source deductions. What will happen when they apply for the 75% is $5,000 is what they're entitled to, but they already took $1,000 in program number 1, so now they're going to get a net check back from the government of $4,000. And that's
Okay.
how the program's designed to work, so that businesses can hit it, but they can but the government only allows the maximum up to that 75%. So I've been advising some clients, if they've got, especially the ones that may have source deductions on the 10th, take the 10%, get that cash flow in, because again, that's much quicker than we're hearing from the government. I'm hearing anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks before they can actually get cash in the hands of small business. The Prime Minister, when pressed today, said, "I'm hoping 3 weeks." I'm hoping it'd be a little quicker than that, because we're in crisis. But again, they've never done something like this. So
Yeah. So just in
it.
terms of the two pieces here, the CRA registration, for those listening, maybe people should register
Yep.
with CRA to do it online. I think they're trying to clean, because you can only go so far, and then you actually have to get something from them in the mail, a PIN for security reasons. I think they're trying to clean that up, but we would encourage everyone, because this may, for a period of time, to get registered, because then they can do direct deposits to your account as these programs evolve. So maybe talk about that. And I would just make the comment that I think the government and the banks are trying to make the banks more of the delivery vehicle, because most of the people listening here that have a business will have a bank account with a financial institution. So they're still trying to work that out, where regardless of what the programs, maybe the funds don't come through CRA, or not, at least not all of them. They may come through the banks eventually, but they're not there yet. So maybe just touch on that registration part, because I think it's important for those that aren't to take the time to do that now.
Absolutely. The account that they've indicated in all of their frequently asked questions and their instructions on the program is your My Business account through CRA. And it's amazing how many clients actually don't have this set up. A lot of our clients have relied on us. If they needed something from CRA, Tim, can you just pull that down and let me know what's happening there? So I've been talking to clients, and I've been working with 3 or 4 of them today, trying to get that set up and get the direct deposit set up. And of course, some things are coming back with errors. Oh, well, they don't have me registered as an officer, and they need my SIN number. And so we're working through a lot of that with CRA. So that's why it's really critically important, while the government is still, let's say, cutting its checks and getting all of its ducks in a row, business needs to get its ducks in a row and get that My Business account. Make sure you're set up on it. Make sure direct deposit is set up on it, because that's going to cut down by about a week and a half, instead of government mailing you checks and you trying to figure out to get them to the bank and everything else. They can just direct deposit the funds in 3-4 days. So the government has really encouraged that. So what I would suggest people to do is Google up the My Business account in CRA, and there is instructions there on how to go about it. Originally, and I don't know if they've got this cleaned up, Ian, but the original thing when you set up a My Business account is you go through all the thing, and then they say, okay, we're going to mail you a PIN number or an ID number, and that's going to come in a week or 10 days. When you get that in the mail, then enter it in the system, and voila, you're all set up. I'm hoping they don't do that. They did not do that from what I've heard in the CERB application process. So I'm hoping they will streamline that, but I don't know. And it sounds like you've heard that they were trying to do that.
Well, we're pushing them hard on it. We've told them that needs to be something that needs to be cleaned up, and they're aware of it. So I just wanted to flag that regardless, people should be registering with CRA. There's a series of questions here, Tim, but I wanted to one more, because it's something I've heard all this weekend into last. Some of these programs, particularly for small businesses, and as you know, having been you were on the chamber board for, it just seems like for forever, but for I think 6 or 7 years.
Just remember, I was on the board that hired you, Ian. That's all I want to.
That's true.
And then they.
Smart choice. Listen, but most of our businesses are small, and many of them would have, when they applied for both the CERB or the loan program as it was originally set up, because small businesses may have a small payroll of $40,000-$50,000 a year for one or two employees part-time, but the individuals, the principals, take dividend income. Has any of that been cleaned up where dividend income for the owners of company would qualify you for those programs? Because I know we're again continuing to push that, but have they made any changes on that that you're aware of?
Yeah. From what I could see, yeah, payroll and dividends in lieu of payroll, anything like that, and yeah, and certainly the so I've not got any kind of indication that they're doing anything in dividends in lieu of salary there.
Okay, well, we're pushing on that because many small businesses would that be the way that they would ordinarily do it. Okay, so going to some of the questions here. Okay, you've answered the question about EI, or if an employee has already applied for EI and receiving EI, can they receive, or how do they get the CERB benefit? So is it one or the other, or can you pull them back on? Because the hope is that businesses will keep the employees connected to them, even though you may not be in operation, so that when we get past this, that there's actually businesses to, start again.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that. So the question is, maybe we just repeat that one again, Ian, just so I get that.
So it says, if an employee has already applied to EI and is receiving EI benefits, how do they get the CERB benefit? Or are they separate?
They are, once they were in the EI system, they continue in the EI system, and they're probably actually, if they're on the maximum benefit, they're probably better off in the EI system, because the maximum benefit there is $573 a week versus the $500 a week that the CERB is.
Okay.
For anyone applying now into the system, you automatically you do not go into EI, you go to the CERB, and that's the program you're kind of in at this stage. So you're automatically slotted in there.
Okay, so there's a question around self-employed entrepreneurs, and this has been one that's come up with Communitech, and because many are in startup or pre-revenue, so their income is negligible. So there was at one point, and I think I read this as well, where you had to have at least a minimum $5,000 income in 2019. Is that still the case? Was that gross or net? And again, if you're in startup mode, I mean, many wouldn't qualify. I think they've made some modifications to that so that people weren't excluded that were in that bait, or if not, I know we're still having those discussions as well.
Yeah, right now the latest I saw, because I had a client again ask about that, they had a spouse that had maybe like $10,000 worth of income during the year. So it's still that kind of that $5,000 threshold. The other key criteria though that put this client out of the thing is you can't have left your job voluntarily. So if you quit your job and you still have 10,000, you still met that threshold, but if you quit your job, you're not going to be eligible for the CERB, because they want to be touching the people that actually were forced out of the job essentially, or forced out of employment due to COVID or any other the situations that could arise due to COVID.
Okay. So there's a question here. If you're a business owner and the emergency benefits are not enough to cover expenses, and are willing to work somewhere for a couple of months to keep cash flow, so presumably taking a part-time job to help kind of
Right.
fill that gap, will you have your emergency benefits pulled back? I would assume the answer is no in the short term, and it'll get cleaned up after if there was something, but I haven't heard that they would do that
No.
at this point.
Yeah, if the government's full goal here is to keep people employed. So if you're, I'm not sure lucky enough, but certainly if you're able to supplement your income with other part-time employment and still keep your payroll and your business going, the wage subsidy is still in play. If you applied for the emergency benefit, then that's where the Prime Minister is trying to work up a new program to kind of deal with people that may have taken a part-time job just to try to make ends meet, that they wouldn't suddenly now they're not eligible for the $500 a week because they needed to be completely out of the job. There's a chunk of that population that's kind of missing or has been left behind there. The Prime Minister has recognized that, and with a lot of things is saying soon, just wait.
Okay. Okay, I think we've answered this one. How are wage subsidies paid to a qualified company? So if you're approved, CRA would approve it. It's presumably coming from them directly to the business in their bank account, or if they get it organized with the banks, it would go CRA and be deposited direct into your bank. So I think that's the way that it's at the present time is the way that it would be paid. And I think the other one,
but that would be by direct deposit, and that
yeah,
again, just reiterating the importance of making sure that you're set up for that.
set up for that. Okay, and then there's the CEBA. Can payroll requirements include T5? That's the dividends part. That's either it's underway, right?
Yeah, the CEBA, I've not heard that T5s are going to be part of that payroll yet. If it is, that would be very much welcome, Ian.
Well, I think that again, that's going to, for many small businesses, it's sort of, you're going to, some of those people that are on the phone or on this webinar today and that I've been hearing from are just going to get missed because that's their source of income. So
well, and that would be just penalizing them for there could be many choices why you chose to take dividends instead of payroll, and that's just penalizing those business owners. But
yeah.
I think the government sometimes feels that if companies are paying dividends, then that's just extra. That isn't their base compensation, which isn't the right assumption.
And just so to reinforce for everyone listening, we are banging away at that every day, like several times a day. I'm on the phone. I know, folks like the accounting firms and others are saying, here's what our clients say. Certainly the Chamber of Commerce, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, CFIB, everyone is saying you're missing big chunks of business when you do that. So it's not a definitive answer, but stay tuned because we are pushing on that. It won't stop until that one gets resolved. Okay, what do we got left here? We have, we are a small business payroll. Oh yeah, so that one's on dividends as well. So the business requirements to qualify for the $40,000 loan. So maybe just quickly go over what are those parameters to qualify for the $40,000 loan, emergency loan guaranteed by the federal government, that in theory is 10,000 of it may be I don't know, grant or non-repayable. Maybe just give the base on what that looks like, because the banks should have started. I think 2 days ago is what they talked about. I don't think they're accepting quite yet, but what are the rules around that?
Yeah, I'm going to read it pretty much verbatim of how they've got it, but we're going to provide interest-free loans up to $40,000 to small business and not-for-profits to help cover their operating costs during a period where their revenues have been reduced due to COVID-19. Small businesses and not-for-profits should contact their financial institution to apply for these loans. To qualify, these organizations need to demonstrate that they paid between $50,000 and $1 million in total payroll in 2019. And repaying the balance of the loan on or before December 31st, 2022 will result in loan forgiveness of of 25% up to $10,000. So really right now it is, you got a Canadian company and or a Canadian small business, and you got that payroll number. That's how they've approached it. And again, that's the thing where the chambers are banging on the government that should also include at least dividends to owners.
To the owners, because most of them would have payroll might not meet the 50,000, and that's the example on both cases with the dry cleaner and the sub shop. I talked to our members a couple of days or yesterday. They don't qualify because they don't hit that 50,000 because dividends not included. So,
and the other thing I think you should be advocating for is that $1 million is probably too light. There is a bunch of businesses there that just, I've talked to a couple that were at 1.2, 1.3, and it's like, boy, we could really use that. We could really use that program.
Yeah, and we've heard about that on both sides, so we're working on that. Okay, if an employer, and this is Chris Farrell, I think from the small business, if the employer indicated laid off on the ROE for the employee, is the employer obligated to rehire after 13 weeks? So this is where it gets to, there's some very specific things when you lay off versus let go. And that's in the EI system. I don't pretend to understand that specifically, but maybe you want to take a crack at that one.
I'll take a small crack on. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is if you don't after, I think it's 14 weeks, I think. But anyways, after that point in time, if you don't bring them back, they're considered to be terminated. And as such, then all of the labor legislation kicks in terms of have you paid them all of their accrued vacation pay, have you paid them any lieu time, any severance obligations, those types of things.
Okay. A question here, and this is, and so there some accountants are recommending or the options are to lay people off so that they can apply for the CERB. Or it may, and this is where there's a business decision in here too, right? So what's the best interest of the employee, the employer, of keeping them on payroll and applying for the 75% wage subsidy, because you still have to pay the other part of that is as everyone on the line would know, you still got to pay your employee benefits costs and other things. So there is some cost to it. The advantage is that you still have your employees when you want to open operations, as opposed to may or may not have them coming back. So I guess the question is, or the question here from Steve is, and maybe, do you know if we can change once we've laid off our staff? So this is one where some people have right away laid staff off, and I think that was a question I was getting at earlier. Can you bring them back on and you utilize the 75%?
You can bring them back.
And I think that
is right. What you got to demonstrate is payroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you have to demonstrate that you're paying payroll.
Yeah. So if you're in one stream, it doesn't prevent you from going to the other. But in most cases, you just have to, you'll have to, the documentation or the information that's required will still apply. Let me see here. I think there's if employees voluntarily stop working despite being work available in an essential industry. So this would apply to those that qualify to be open. It sounds like they may not be eligible for the CERB. So if they want to suddenly return to work, are we required to hire them back immediately? So it really, I think the question's getting at here is the employee is determining they do not want to work during this period. Presumably then the employer would say, okay, well, I guess I'm laying you off or letting you go. Right. And then they decide they want to come back. Are you under the obligation? Maybe that's an HR issue, but how would you handle that from an accounting? The question as you as accountant.
I think as an accountant, I think if you wanted to hire them back, I think you're within your rights to do that. I think I understood from Allison when I got on the webcast that you're going to be probably having a webcast next week on employment law.
Yeah.
I think that's that piece that should be I don't want to pass the buck on it, but that's probably a really good question for that piece, because a lot of clients I'm seeing are looking at that issue. A few things: can I do across the board wage cut? Just, I want to keep everybody, but I want to cut their salary by 10, 15, 20%. What does that mean for me as far as constructive dismissal and terminations and the like? And there's a lot of businesses out there where it's not necessarily kosher for you to lay off people, right? You just can't say I'm laying off. There are certain agreements that have to be in play. So I will probably defer that one a little bit more to your folks next week.
Okay, and so I think that was Chloe that was asking that. We will make sure, and Allison and Christine, who are put all these things together, are going to make sure that I don't forget to ask that question, because I think we do have someone coming on from, I think it's Gowlings, that's going to answer some of the legal side of these questions. Okay, I think that's, I don't know if there's any more questions. Voluntarily stop, source. I think we've answered a lot of these. I think that's it. One thing I would just make comment, and I know, Tim, we having been a board member, this is a tough time for a lot of businesses, and so the chamber is here to support. Most of you will be members, but even if you're not, we're here to support our members, and so if you're having some trouble, we're not. We'll deal with membership and fees down the road. We want to help people get through this immediate crisis right now. So, and I would say that one of the things that and I'm very proud of our board, and again, Tim served with distinction on the chamber board for a number of years. They've said, look, we're here to support the community, support all business, including especially our members, but all business. But we need to get through this as a community. So we appreciate, Tim, you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're probably got a raft of voice messages and emails to get back. People are trying to figure out what the changes which are happening daily will mean for them and their business. So we appreciate you taking time and making yourself available to us. We will, as things change, we may call on you again, because I think we both agree. We've talked on the phone. You've been on the show 2 or 3 weeks in a row. It's changing so fast. It's important for people to get accurate, good information. So our friends at BDO are happy to answer your individual calls. You can call up Tim, and they would be available to you. We at the chamber, as I think you all know, have our daily update, which comes out, which has everything from public health to the programs federally, provincially, and all kinds of other material, some of which would be BDO. I think you've done webinars right across the country. Yes. There's lots of resources that are in that daily update that comes out, and we will have experts like Tim back on as frequently as need to, so that you have the information that you need. I encourage you to join us again at our next session. Tell your friends, and whether they're members or not, they're welcome to join. They just need to go to our website and register as they become available, because Tim donating his or volunteering his time, and BDO and lots of businesses stepping up. We're in this together, and we're only going to get it through if we support one another. So I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Tim. Tim, as managing partner of BDO, does a great job and is a great supporter of the community. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, and I wish all the people listening on this webcast the very best. There's some tough times ahead, but as Ian said, as a community, we'll marshal through it.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great afternoon. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.